Welcome to Verses and Visions Creative Conversations, where creativity and purpose meet to inspire and uplift. I'm Cassidy Beck, your host, here to explore the stories of artists, dreamers, and changemakers who are walking in faith and using their unique gifts to make a difference. Each episode is a reminder that your vision, paired with God's purpose, can transform the world around you. Let's get started and spark some inspiration together. Hey friends, before we jump into today's conversation, I've been thinking about those small, meaningful things that bring us together. For me, that's often sharing a bottle from my family's premium soda company, Soda Beers. Whether it's crisp ginger beer, smooth butterscotch beer, classic root beer, original apple beer, or apple beer 5, our low-calorie twist, each flavor is a small little reminder of home and of the simple joys. Okay, now let's dive in. I'm thrilled to be welcoming Whitney. Welcome, Whitney.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I met Whitney at an LDS PMA conference. Whitney has been writing since she was in grade school and holds a bachelor's in screenwriting from Chaplin University. She writes in just about every genre and format for both children and adults, but never beyond PG-13. She's a regular contributor for LDS Living, and her LDS inspirational nonfiction book, Types, Shadows, and Casseroles, Finding Christ in Your Daily Life, took first place in the 2025 LDS PMA Praiseworthy Awards. Her poetry has been included in college curriculum. Her short stories appear in multiple anthologies, and she's currently working on a speculative rom-com novel. When she's not writing, Whitney enjoys presenting at conferences, working on new designs for her 3D printing business, and doing cardio dance. She lives in Utah with her husband, 4 sons, and single houseplant. She is miraculously kept alive for almost 9 months. So, Whitney, is your houseplant still alive?
It is. And I cannot remember exactly when my husband gave it to me. It was either Valentine's Day, my birthday, Mother's Day, sometime in the spring. One of my favorite colors is purple, and it's super cute. It's got these little leaves, and they're green on top, but purple on bottom, and they feel like velvet. And the name of the plant was Baby Bunny Belly. It really does feel like the belly of a baby bunny. It's the funnest plant. And it's got this one vine that has come down so far that my kids are fighting to not have to be the person who has to sit on that side of the table because they always get hit with a vine when they have to go to the bench. But yes, I've kept it alive.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So, tell us something that you are finding inspiration from right now. Is it like a song, a scripture, a book, or anything?
Gosh, a couple months ago, I was reading in Psalm 61, and there's a phrase in there where it says, "Lead me to the rock that is higher than I." And my brain just latched on to this idea of the rock that is higher, referring to Christ. We've heard of Christ being referred to as the rock, but my brain had never really heard this phrase, the rock that is higher. And as I started ruminating on that idea, I just had this thought of, I want to do a collection of poetry that's poems that praise the names of God. So what I've been doing is I've been going through the scriptures, and every time I come across a title for Christ, I'm writing that down. Finding all these unique ones out of context has been a really cool exercise for me. And so that's probably one of my fun little passion projects right now. That's guiding my personal studies, going through and finding all these different titles and pondering them and eventually writing poems about some of them. I do have a few poems that I've written along the way, but that's my current source of inspiration. Just seeing all these different titles, and we don't always think of them as titles, right? They're not always capitalized. Like the one in Psalms, the rock that is higher than I. None of that's capitalized, but that refers to Christ, and that's a cool name for him. And he that shaketh the saw. So there's all these really cool little titles that talk about the roles of Christ. And I don't know, I think it's probably appeals to me because in my creative path, I would have a much more lucrative career if I could pick one genre and one format and build one audience. And that's not the way I function. My ideas come to me from all these different genres and formats and age groups. I beat myself up for that a lot at the beginning of my journey. I was never going to be able to make it unless I followed the advice at all the writing conferences, right? Pick one genre, stick to it, build up an audience, build up a newsletter, build up your social media platform, like all these things. And it stressed me out, taking a little detour and writing this short story or working on this poem when I was supposed to be working on this novel. I've come to accept the fact that this is what my journey looks like. And I am all these different things. I am a novel writer. I am a nonfiction writer. I am a poet. I am a screenwriter. And I can be all of those different things. And they're different parts of who I am, titles and roles of Christ, and just seeing that little part of my journey reflected in that.
I love that answer so much. The rock that is higher than I. It's such a beautiful picture. The one that came immediately into my mind, Christ pulling up through the water. Do you know what
Yeah.
one I'm thinking of? I
Yeah.
think
Oh, goodness.
it's
Is it Kim Young Soon or something like
that's
that?
Whitney realized after the episode. We nearly got the name of the artist correct, but it's actually Young Sung Kim. We wanted to make sure we give proper credit to him. Yes. I love that imagery and the title that goes with it. In listening to the ones you were listing, can you tell me a little bit more from your research or what you have thought about the one about the saw?
Him that shaketh the saw.
I don't
Yes.
know what that means at all.
Nephi, but it's from the Isaiah chapters of Nephi. So I believe it's in Isaiah as well. In Counseling God's People, he was talking about how he's the one in control. It's referencing this idea of we are the instrument in his hands, right? The saw can't take credit for being the one that cuts down the tree. The saw can't cut down a tree by itself. The person who cuts down the tree is he who shaketh the saw. And with that one, as I've been trying to come up with ideas for a poem, I've been thinking about all the different ways I'm an instrument in God's hands, the things that God can do through me and perhaps has done through me. I also want to explore this idea of, are there times where I've felt like maybe things in my life have been cut down, but really that entire event was an instrument to bring about something better in my life, an opportunity to get closer to God. So there's a lot of different ways I might take that, but that idea of he's the one that shakes the saw. He's the one that's in control.
I love that idea. Thank you for elaborating. You are a recipient of the 2025 LDS Praiseworthy Award. Tell us a little bit more about your book, Types, Shadows, and Casseroles.
So this is my book, Type Shadows and Casseroles, Finding Christ in Your Daily Life. Gosh, I forget how many years ago, 12, 15. I had a friend who from church who said, I love the insights you give in class. You should really write a book. And I was like, oh no, I'm a screenwriter. I'm not going to write a book. And then I think I went home that day and was like, could I write a book? And I started thinking about it. And that day, the title, Type Shadows and Casseroles, came into my mind. So from the very beginning, I knew that was going to be the title. It started off as a collection of stories from my life and ways that I found Christ in those different stories, how I found Christ in my various stories. I worked on it off and on for a while. Then there was one day where the Spirit was oh so wonderfully kind and said, Whitney, no one's going to read your book. No one's going to buy your book. No one's going to read your book. And I was like, that's so rude because you're the one who told me to write it. I felt inspired to be doing this thing. The inspiration came that people didn't need to know the ways that I'd found Christ in my life. They needed to know how to find Christ in their own lives. It needed to shift so that it wasn't so much of a memoir. I realized it needed to become more of a self-help. How do you find symbols of Christ? There had been a lady in one of our gospel doctrine classes who made a comment. She said, I love the comments you make. I wish my brain could work that way, but it just doesn't. And that was foreign to me. I'm like, what do you mean your brain doesn't work that way? Like you can't find symbols? Like everybody can do that, right? No, apparently writers and creative people tend to do that a lot. In the writer community, a lot of the creatives have no problem drawing symbolism, comparisons, and metaphors. It tends to come easy and it's just a natural process. And then I started asking around more and found out there's a large portion of at least women in the church. The group I was talking to was a women group that I had surveyed. And they said when people make these comments in class about these connections from their scripture studies, I just think, how are you doing that? How are you finding those on your own? I need a manual to tell me. I need a teacher to tell me. I can't do that on my own. And so that was a pivot point for me. And I had to ask the Lord, I'm like, how do I do it? Because it just happens in my head. What is the process? Praying about it and really pondering it. The Spirit gave me like a step-by-step breakdown of this is what your brain is doing. And I was like, okay, well, if this is true, then the premise is you can find symbols of Christ in anything, any situation, any object, any story of your life. If this process is going to work, it's got to work for anything. I would pick random things and say, following this process, can I find Christ in it? I'm going to pick the most obscure, non-spiritual scripture I can think of and try to find Christ in it. And the one I ended up choosing was my father dwelt in a tent. To this day, that is one of the top 5 scripture study sessions I have had in my life. That's when I was like, okay, this really is a thing. This is how my brain does it. And it does actually work. It's been an incredible process shifting the book in that way and putting it out. I've gotten feedback from different people of the ways it's helped their family grow closer together or the way they've been able to rethink about things, even people who didn't struggle with finding symbols of Christ, but just a new approach of doing things and the insights they've been able to have. And is it going to make me rich and be able to afford a house in this economy? No. But the payoff has been pretty incredible all the same, just not financially.
That's really incredible. So I like the title. Can you explain a little bit more about how types, shadows, and casseroles help you find Christ in your daily life?
The phrase types and shadows, that comes from the scriptures, right? They talk about everything being a type or a shadow of Christ. If you think an orange is a type of fruit, it has these same characteristics that other fruit have. There's other things that are different, but there's some fundamental characteristics that they all share in common, and that makes them a type of fruit. A shadow is visually a reflection of this object that's either in front of you or behind you. You can cast a shadow in either direction, but it's not a perfect replication, right? It's not like looking in a mirror, but you still get a sense of the shape of the movement, right? And so those are two different ways that they've described things in the scriptures as being symbols, essentially. And the casseroles portion was me saying, what is just a modern, everyday thing that we don't ever think, oh, we're going to find Christ in this? Casserole was just what came to me that first day. And how do you find Christ in the normal types and shadows that we think of? How can a casserole be a type and a shadow of Christ? How can kids making a mess of toothpaste, where's Jesus in that? I use those as examples in the book of walking through and breaking things down and saying, where do we find Christ in here? It's cool because there's not one right answer. You can hold it up and say, okay, here's all of these different things, and let me find Christ in it. Now let me spin it around and look at it from a different perspective. One of the examples we use is the story of David and Goliath. Where's Jesus in that? If we think of ourselves as David, what if Jesus is the rock that is being thrown that brings down our Goliath? What if he's King Saul? How is King Saul like Jesus? And what if Jesus is David? Then how can we find those symbols? And it all comes down to, what can the Spirit teach me in this moment? With what I know about Christ and what I know about these things, how can the Spirit teach me as I reconsider things from different angles? It's not so much that there's like these hidden truths we have to learn buried in these symbols. It's in considering the symbols, the Spirit is teaching us truths that we need to know.
The best advice that you've received was from a director, Mitch Davis, and he said that a story worth telling matters more than learning how to write. How do you feel like that perspective has shared the kind of stories that you would like to tell?
Yeah, it was when I was looking to go into film school, and he being a director said, learning how to write movies is fine, but having a story worth telling is more important. And so that's shaped things in the sense that I'll give you an example of me forgetting this lesson and then relearning it. There was a call for an anthology for dark mermaid short stories. I had no plans of writing it, 'cause I'm like, I don't write dark stuff. And then I had a friend who was writing a submission, and she asked me to beta read. And then I got COVID and I had nothing to do for 4 days. And so I was like, I'm going to write a short story. Sure, why not? Like, I wanted to challenge myself. Technically, could I write something darker? Did I have the writing chops to do this? One of my friends was on the committee and she said, if you're doing submissions, we want these mermaids to not be the heroes. It's dark. They should not be the good guys. They wanted it dark. And so I wrote this story and very proud of the lyrical prose and like the setting. And I thought it turned out really well. And then it got rejected. And the reason they gave is it felt too dark. And I was like, are you serious? The only reason I made the ending be that way is because I thought that's what they wanted. It wasn't this ending I would have done personally, but it's what I thought it needed to have in order to be accepted. And having them rejected is probably the best thing that could have happened because I wouldn't be as proud of that story, I think, if it had been published with the original ending that I thought it needed to have in order to please the people I thought were going to publish it. I decided I was going to self-publish the story, change the ending. And the story overall thematically is still dark. It deals with agency and abuse and things of that nature. But the ending, I've had people say it's dark, but it's surprisingly hopeful. And I came to realize that that's the story that I think is worth telling. I don't know that it's worth telling a story that, hey, there's a bunch of darkness in this world and life sucks. I think it's worth saying, hey, there's a bunch of darkness in this world and life can suck, but there is hope. There is the chance of something better coming. There is light somewhere. Because I don't think toxic positivity is good for us either. Ignoring what's in the shadows is not healthy. Christ constantly was searching out people who lived in the margins, who lived in the shadows, who had been forgotten, who society didn't want to look at. They shunned them. I think of the picture where Christ is helping the man at the pool of Bethesda. There's the famous picture where he's lifting up the little fabric that the guy had a makeshift tent under. Do you know the picture I'm talking about? But I love that the Savior's not just standing there talking to him. I love that he's lifting that. It's like the man was hiding because society wanted him hidden. And Christ says, no, I see you. So I do think it's important to be able to talk about the hard things, especially for those of God's children who have a reality that is a lot harder than a lot of us would ever dream of having to go through. And being able to hold up a light and say, I see you. And I see that it's not easy, but there can still be hope. I'm actually incredibly proud of that short story. It's called Neither Light Nor Mercy, and it's a 30-minute read, but I'm really proud of it because it's a reminder to me to not write what I think people want to hear in order to be accepted. It's a reminder to me to always write the story that I think is worth telling. And if others don't think it's worth reading, then that's on them, but somebody will, right? You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but you will be somebody's.
I think that's such good advice. I think there's a trap that you want to go into the trending thing or find the thing that will give you the sure popularity so that you can appeal to all of the everybody's. And I love what I hear you saying is that some things might be popular, but they're not worth exploring or putting out. You have to believe in your story first.
There was a job I had once at a bank in California. And my dad used to always say, Whitney, you could make a killing in sales. Like you have the personality, you could make a killing in sales. I had this job as a bank teller. What I didn't know when I got hired is that they had sales quotas. They expected us to open a certain amount of bank accounts and checking accounts. I was out of state in college, didn't know a lot of people. None of my family and friends were there. And my boss was like, you haven't opened this many check-ins. So I'm like, I don't know. He said, what about your family? Why haven't they opened accounts? I'm like, they don't live here. This was before smartphones and apps and mobile banking. And I'm like, how would they bank here? They could mail their checks in and use an ATM. If they opened one, they would just close it a month later as soon as they were allowed to. It would only be to pad the numbers. I didn't believe in it. And I realized I can't sell things I don't believe in. It made me very excited to go on my mission. I said, I believe in that product. I can sell that product. I can share the gospel 100% because I know that I'm not just trying to con someone into something that's benefiting me, right? I know that what I'm telling them about can benefit them. And so with my stories, for me to be able to say, yeah, I think you should buy my book, I have to believe that there is value in it. If I can't believe in my work, how am I ever going to want to ask people to buy it? It's, hey, I have a message and I think it's worth your time. Whether it's going to inspire you or make you laugh and give you a fun escape from the dumpster fire that is society sometimes. There's different purposes. I'm not saying everything that anyone writes has to bring people closer to God in a literal sense, but just being able to give people value is important and to have the confidence that you are giving them something of value. Because if you don't believe in that, why are you writing? Why are you trying to sell your books?
You know how much I love sharing stories that inspire faith and hope. I'm excited to tell you about my new children's book, Sheep Chronicles Baptism. It's about Joshua, a curious boy with big questions about baptism, and the parable of a lost sheep named Shannon, shared by his wise grandpa. It's been such a joy to write this story, and I can't wait for you and your family to read it together. So you've had a lot of really cool life experiences. So you mentioned before, like you were serving in Argentina. You also were able to stay at a Buddhist Dharma art center, which sounds very cool. All these things are rich in perspectives. How do you feel like these experiences or themes have both changed you and the characters in your story?
The Buddha Dharma Art Center was like a 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. I forget exactly how long. It was part of a college class. We were studying world religions. And then we went to Colorado and lived at this Dharma Art Center. I was the only member of my faith there. I went to a small private college in California, and we had a little institute class. It was like 5 people most days. We weren't a large group. And so I was definitely the only person there. It was a neat experience because I was able to take what I was learning and find common ground, find truth. When we sat there to try and learn how to meditate, I was able to take things and adapt it. When we learned about Ikebana floral arranging and how there's earth and heaven and the connection and layers, I was able to see the gospel truths that I knew and believed. It helped me appreciate that there's so much that we have in common, right? That people aren't so different. But at the same time, I learned that I was fundamentally different in my beliefs. There was some activity they were doing on Sunday, and I asked permission to not participate. Instead, I took a hike up the mountain, wrote in my journal, read some scriptures, and did the whole Nephi approach to Sabbath worship, get up in the mountain. It was a great experience in giving me strength to be who I was and be confident that this is who I am. It doesn't matter if nobody else understands me. It doesn't matter if nobody else agrees with my beliefs or they think I'm weird for not doing this thing. I really centered on an understanding of who I was and who I wanted to be. I think that has helped shape my characters in my story. I'm a firm believer that knowing your character needs to come first. You could have a cool plot idea, but if we don't know the character, if we don't know why they're doing what they're doing and what is changing about them, what was the point? I believe there are exceptions to every rule. But fundamentally, we crave story because we want to see people overcome adversity. We want to see them reach their goals. We want to see them learn and change because it's a safe learning ground and experimental area for us as we try to work through the things that are happening in our real life. Stories and fiction give us that safe space to learn through empathy and through the experiences of others. For a character to feel real, they can't be just like every other character. There has to be something unique to them. And you, as an author, have to have the confidence of knowing this is my character. This is what the character would say. This is what the character would do. Not this is what the story needs the character to say or do. But they, as a character, they believe these things. They want these things. They're afraid of these things. There's things in that character that ring true with the reader, things they can identify with and relate to. So you want your characters to be unique, but also relatable. I feel like I really got a grasp of that at the Dharma Art Center, the sensation of I am different and confident in who I am. but I can see all the similarities with the people around me, even though they believe differently. I can see the similarities in my faith and these Dharma arts, even though we've got Western world and Eastern world and very different at face value, right? So it's just understanding people, I think, how we connect and how we're individual and finding the harmony between those two.
What an incredible experience. I think that must have been empowering for you to be like, this means so much to me that yes, I'm going to ask for special permission and forge my own way because this means that much to me. As a part of your experience, you've mentioned that being a wife and a mother has taught you more than any other classroom or travel could. How do you feel like motherhood inspires or informs your writing?
My kids, anyone who's had kids knows that there's this phase they go through where they just ask questions and questions, right? Why is the sky blue? I've been asked that question like 800 times, and I've looked up the answer multiple times. For some reason, I keep forgetting the scientific reason. There are times where it gets overwhelming, and you're like, can we just listen to the song in the car and not ask questions right now? Mommy's brain needs a break. But it has helped me keep alive my sense of curiosity and wonder, especially when they ask things where I'm like, I don't know. I think if you want to create stories, you have to keep a sense of wonder. You have to be able to ask questions and say, why? Why would this character do this thing? Why do people fear, what we tend to fear? How can I overcome this thing? How can I believe all these little questions that we ask? Some of it has led me to discover really cool scientific things that wind up in some of my sci-fi stories. It has created this constant curiosity and love of learning. A lot of my boys are actually into Dungeons and Dragons, and so they're telling me all about their characters that they're creating or the different things, and we get to bond a little bit over that with ideas that I have for characters sometimes come straight from different things they tell me about their campaign, and I'm like, oh, this would be really funny if I did this or that. And so they're wonderfully helpful in being able to bounce ideas off of, and they're great cheerleaders. So that's been really nice too, is to be able to see them look proud. My mom wrote a book. That's pretty cool. My mom's got a story. When's this one coming out, mom? So that's been pretty nice. But on the flip side, you don't know your weaknesses until you have kids, right? You think, but I never raised my voice ever until I gave birth. And then something happened where I was capable of yelling at a human being. And I'm not proud of that, but it's something I didn't know I had in me and that I've had to really work to overcome. That's also been informative because when you put your characters in stories, you tend to push them to their limits. What did they not know that they were capable of? How can they overcome these weaknesses or these lies they believe about themselves and the world to learn what they need to learn and become who they need to become to achieve their goals? Between inspiration and cheerleading and that old saying of they kids hold up a mirror to you and you get to see who you really are for better or for worse, they inspire me to want to be better. Even though they show me the worst of myself, I own it, that's on me, and they give me a reason to want to improve that.
At Verses and Visions, we like to talk about how you have overcome self doubt or imposter feelings. Tell us your experience with that.
Oh goodness. Imposter syndrome, I think I've met two people in the writing community who say they've never felt it. Both were men, take that for what you will. They were very confident and good for them that they had that level of confidence and belonging. But for anybody else, we doubt ourselves a lot. And society can be so critical that it trains us to doubt ourselves. One thing that was revolutionary for me was a year or two ago, I was looking up the definition of imposter. Essentially, an imposter is someone who has the intent to deceive, right? And so a lot of the reasons that make us feel like imposters is we think we don't belong. We think we haven't achieved the same level of success as other people, or that the work we've put in to achieve this level of success isn't as much work as other people have. And so maybe we don't deserve this success. But once I recognized that nowhere in there have I ever done anything trying to deceive people, right? I've shown up, I've done the best I could, I've taken the wins that have come, And I've kept showing up when the wins haven't come. And nowhere in there did I go to a writing conference trying to deceive people and pretend to be something I'm not. I was just doing the best I could. By definition, I cannot be an imposter. If I'm not trying purposely to deceive people, I am not an imposter. And that really helped me a lot. Another thing that helped me, so two other thoughts. One is in D&C 25, we usually always focus on the Lord giving Emma the commandment to create the hymn book, right? But I love verse 2. He talks about walking in the paths of virtue. I love that because when we feel like an imposter, it's because we see that there's one way we're supposed to be, one path to success. If we haven't achieved that, we don't belong. Or if we achieve that, but we did it a different way, then it doesn't count, right? But the Lord didn't say the path of virtue. He said the paths of virtue. There is more than one way. There's more than one path. Every path is Him. He is the way. It's going to look different for everybody. That has brought me a lot of comfort in realizing my journey doesn't have to look like other people's journeys in order for me to feel like I deserve the same level of success that they have, or that I count as being as high up in whatever. When I recognize why I feel called to create these things, then whatever path gets me to creating them, that's my path and I can own it. I'm not trying to deceive anyone by saying my path is the only path or the better path. This was the path that I took and it worked for me. And everyone is going to have to find their own path. We go to conferences, listen to podcasts, and we get people's stories of what worked for them. Ultimately, we're going to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and we're going to have to carve out our own path and find out what works for us. And it's going to look different. And that doesn't mean we don't belong, right? It doesn't mean that we're an imposter. It just means everybody has their own unique path. I love that we have a God who loves diversity and who takes into account individuality. And that can reflect in everything in our lives, including the path we take to create art and literature. At my first LDSPMA conference, and I had been struggling, the constant struggle I would go back to is all these things that I was learning that I needed to do to be successful, right? This is how you build a newsletter. This is how you build a career. This is how you make money. This is how you become a successful writer. One that was plaguing me a lot is because I write in so many different genres, it was like you need to do a different pen name. You need to have a different platform. If you want to build an audience, you have to have a different social media presence for each one so that you're not confusing reader expectations. I struggle to maintain one persona on social media and to try and cultivate one for each of my pen names. And my pen names are variations of my name, right? W.O. Hemsath, Whitney Hemsath, Whitney Owens Hemsath. So they're all me. I'm not hiding behind a name, but I wanted to have a distinction so that I could help signal to the reader, hey, you might have liked this rom-com, but this is books about Jesus, just so you know. Like you might get some religion in this one. And if it's not your cup of tea, fine. And you weren't expecting it, right? So I understand the logic behind it and I've done my best, but the idea of creating a separate social media platform for each of those things so that I wouldn't turn off my romance readers because of my LDS living articles. I was so overwhelmed at that idea to the point where I wanted to walk away, trying to think of how to move forward with that. I would just mentally and emotionally shut down and not know how to proceed. And then I couldn't be creative and it was just a disaster. I knew that my religious nonfiction was really important to me, but I didn't want to ignore all these creative ideas I have for fiction and stories. There's value in those, even if they don't have explicit religious messages, right? There's messages of hope or there's messages of humor, of choosing love, even when it's hard. The thought that, had been coming to me is that people want you to be authentic. That was the other message coming through a lot in a lot of these marketing classes is authenticity and be the real you. And so trying to figure out how to be the real me in this fractured sense in all these different platforms and how to maintain that. And I was feeling overwhelmed as I was driving home. The Spirit said, thy faith hath made thee whole. If you want to put your whole self out there, you want to be your authentic self, you cannot do that without your faith. That's who you are, Whitney. And I knew then that it was okay. I could do one social media platform and I could put my religious stuff on it. And when I had my fiction stuff, I could put it there too. Maybe I would confuse all the algorithms and not have a super successful social media platform, that would be okay. It didn't mean I was going to fail. It might mean I didn't have as lucrative a career as others. Understanding why I was writing and that success was allowed to look different for me than for others. Success didn't have to look like a ton of money coming in royalty checks or thousands of followers. Success could look like an email saying, hey, read your LDS Living article today, shared it in the temple workers meeting as my spiritual thought, really resonated with people. Thanks so much. And going, huh, connected with somebody. Somebody found value in what I wrote, and it helped somebody feel closer to God, even if only for a moment. And having accepted that my faith is what makes me whole. If people want the authentic me, they're going to get dark mermaid stories, Jesus nonfiction, and rom-coms. They're going to get all of it because that's who I am. And it's not conventional, but it's okay. It's okay to have your own path to success, your own path of virtue that you're on. And as more and more people who feel that way embrace that, other people begin to feel confident that they can do the same too. You know, we really can diversify what success looks like and give people the confidence to embrace their path and what success looks like to them as being just as much value as the ideal that we usually get in all our marketing classes and conferences.
I love the idea so much, and it's definitely new to me that if authenticity is the goal, how you get there is through faith that makes you whole, and that showing your whole self is being authentic. I love that idea so much, and thank you for sharing that.
And that's not to say if people have social media platforms and they don't put their religious stuff on there, I'm not knocking that at all. But for me, I was grateful that the Spirit prompted me that this is what my path looks like. And for me, this is how I need to move forward. And it has given me the confidence to feel like I am putting my whole self out there in the way that I need to be doing.
And I really like that because I did take the path of segregating and having a bunch of different social medias. Just yesterday, I was like, how do I keep up all of these things? It does feel a little bit fractured. And I like your approach to put it all in one. I think that's a great idea.
I'm not saying it's going to make you rich. I'm
Oh,
not
yep.
saying it's the smart marketing strategy. I'm just saying
Yep.
it's the strategy that works for me with what I can do, who I am, and what I feel called to put out into the world. This is what works for me. If it works for other people, awesome. If it doesn't, that's fine too. Lots of paths of virtue, lots of paths to success.
Is there anything else you feel like we haven't covered that you'd like to share?
If you want to hear me for extended periods of time, go buy my books. No, I think just recognizing that everybody has their path to success and what success looks like for them, but everybody has their own why, their own reason. And once you tap into that, it doesn't matter if only one person ever finds value in it. Sometimes I think, oh, I don't have a huge readership. I don't have a fan base other than my three kids and my husband. But I think about the Lord leaving the 99 to go after the one. I think about the call we've been given to minister to the one. And I try to keep that in mind because knowing why I write and knowing that I write to try and minister to the one, to connect with one reader. I don't need to connect to a whole fan base. I need to find one reader who takes value in this. If there's ever something you're writing and you're like, this is stupid, no one wants to read this, you don't know that. Pray about it. And if the Spirit's, yeah, no, don't waste your time, then now. But if you feel called to do it, if you feel like this is an idea and God has given you this talent and idea, maybe nobody does read the story. Maybe the point was an exercise for you to learn more in your craft and to grow, right? No writing is wasted. Maybe you publish it and nobody buys it. Doesn't mean your story wasn't good. Might mean that this was a learning experience for you in self-publication and marketing, right? There's so many reasons why things can happen the way they happen, but everybody has a story worth telling. We just have to focus on finding that story and not letting the world dissuade us. If it was worth it for us, maybe we're the one we need to minister to. Sometimes we write just for ourselves, and that's okay. That might be exactly what God has given you your gifts to do, to strengthen yourself so that you can go out in the world and strengthen other people in other ways, maybe not through your writing, right? There's so many ways that God uses our talents to bless others, but also to bless ourselves. And I would just say, if you're feeling like, why am I doing this? Ask God. Pray, say, Lord, why am I doing this? Why should I be doing this? Should I be doing something else? And whatever he says, go with it. That's going to give you the most happiness in life, the most sense of fulfillment and purpose. And maybe it isn't writing. There's a lot of things that God can have us do that are of value. And there are a lot of stories that we can write that are of value. And some of those are going to be set in space with spaceships and laser guns and aliens. And some of them are going to be fluffy rom-coms in which people find a safe space of what good, wholesome love could look like. There's value in everything, no matter what genre you write. If you have a story worth telling, then tell it, and someone will find it valuable.
Where can people find you, Whitney?
Oh, my website is whitneyhemsath.com. You can find everything you need from my website. My fiction and filament business is on there. My social media, I am on Facebook and Instagram at author Whitney Hemsath. If you find my personal page, please don't be offended if I don't accept a friend request. I post about my kids and my family, and I try to keep that private. I have my author webpage at author Whitney Hemsath on Facebook and Instagram. Sometimes I'm more active than others. I always love connecting with people, and I would love to hear from anybody that wants to chat. I always love talking, as you can tell by the amount of things I've rambled about.
This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time. Thank you for your insights. They were just so wonderful. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you so much for having me, Cassidy.
Thanks so much for spending time with me today. If you're looking for a family-friendly, refreshing drink, check out Soda Bears, my family's premium soda company. And for a faith-filled story to share with the little ones, don't miss Sheep Chronicles. Both are available on Amazon. Until next time, keep creating with purpose and faith.